the founder of the conference says, hey, don't put words in my mouth. Instead of these group of people wearing white hoods, they actually come dressed up in coats and ties. They're not the only group of people that feel like that. These men can lose their jobs, their girlfriends can guilt them.
When you say Harris, nobody knows who the hell you're talking about. No, nobody has any idea. Harris. Hey, where's Harris? They know Kamala. They know Kambabla. That was the nickname I used for a while, but I don't use it anymore because everyone thought I was just mispronouncing her name. I wasn't. Kambabla.
The National AmRen American Renaissance Conference took place. This conference has been taking place since 2012, and this year News Channel 5 got a chance to cover it and sit down with the founder of the conference, Mr. Jared Taylor. Welcome to CozyCorner TV. I am your host, Kieran Smith, call me Q, and we're on the corner, ladies and gentlemen. So, the American Renaissance Conference. Man, this conference has been taking place since 2012, and this year, one of the news hosts from News Channel 5 got a chance to sit down with Jared Taylor, I believe his name is. He is the founder of the conference, and man, it was pretty controversial. I think we're going to take a look at this, but what I think you're going to see is that as the founder of the conference is talking, he's asked the news host not to put words into his mouth. He doesn't like the way the news host is, I would say, describing the conference, for lack of better terms. He doesn't like the things that he's saying about it or what it stands for. So the founder of the conference says, hey, don't put words in my mouth. I'm not exactly saying that. So we're going to take a look at all the things today, some of the things that was said about this conference that takes place every single year in Tennessee. They seem to have problems in the past in other states, but Tennessee seems to leave them alone and allows them to have their conference there. The founder of the conference has some pretty far right-wing ideas, which, hey, he's entitled to, right? I could see where this has began to be a little bit of a frenzy among certain groups of people, but the conference is not a new thing. It's been happening, and maybe some people are just now being made privy to it or seeing what it stands for. But Mr. Jared Taylor is usually in the company of those of the likes of Thomas Rousseau, who he is the founder of Patriot Front, and they are a group of young men, far right wing, and they pretty much subscribe to, I guess you could say, a pure state America, for lack of better terms, right? So the co-founder has said things like he believes a pure state can emerge, meaning that that state would probably be full of only white people or those people of Caucasian or European descent. And hey, you know, I actually have a very different stance on this. I don't feel like some of my other counterparts who have seen some of these videos on the internet. I feel like, hey, if their idea is that they want to be around their own type of people, that's the type of company they would like to be in, I say, hey, leave them alone, right? That's what they want. So let's take a look at what this conference kind of stands for and some of the things that might have happened this year at the conference.
Fronting hate. Our exclusive News Channel 5 investigation continues, focusing this time on how Tennessee has become home for what may be the most influential white supremacist gathering in the country.
Every year, a state park right here in Middle Tennessee hosts the so-called American Renaissance Conference, drawing 200 to 300 people from around the country, some of them the biggest names in the world of hate. So who are these people and what do they want? Our Chief Bill Williams.
Some of them the biggest names in the world of hate is what the news anchor said. So this conference takes place in Burns, Tennessee. I believe some and that's where the conference is actually held every year.
To Montgomery Bell State Park in Dixon County to find out. Bill? Well, out in the parking lot, we spotted cars from as far away as California, Texas, Florida, and yes, some from Tennessee. There to hear lectures that they believe will justify their white supremacy. But instead of white robes and hoods, these attendees come in coat and tie.
So the gentleman says that they're coming from all over the place to attend this conference. He's seen license plates from Florida, from all different parts of the world, from all different parts of the United States. I think he said some in the southern region, which I think that's where predominantly a lot of these people are coming from. And then he said Tennessee itself. He says that instead of these group of people wearing white hoods, they actually come dressed up in coats and ties.
Here at Montgomery Bell State Park, the tranquility of a fall afternoon was interrupted by the sounds of protest.
No Nazis, no KKK, no fascist USA!
By a small group of anti-fascists upset over the return of a white supremacist American Renaissance.
So this is a group of protesters here going to protest where the conference is at. This is a group of anti-fascists. So they are going because apparently they show up there every single year to protest this conference, even though there is a police presence and security there.
Conference, an annual event that's been held here at the Parks Lodge and Conference Center since 2012.
We're out here to make a statement. Don't ever come back here again.
Don't ever effing come back here again.
Trying to avoid a clash that erupted 1 year between the two sides, park rangers set up a security perimeter.
So apparently 1 year confrontation erupted between the two sides, and ever since then, that's why they've had this park security set up and this police presence here during the conference.
Shoot yourself like Adolf Hitler.
Confining the Antifa protesters to the backside of
Yikes, he said shoot yourself like Adolf Hitler.
the lodge, separated from the conference by a locked gate.
Basically, they invite some of the worst neo-Nazi hate groups into this park every single year to rally. You can see one of them right there.
In your mind,
This guy who is talking to the news anchor, and he points this gentleman out right here, walking across the bridge with this other guy. This is actually Thomas Rousseau. They later say that in the interview. I'm not sure if I'm going to play it that far to where you guys can hear that part, but this is Thomas Rousseau right here, the founder of Patriot Front, I believe the name of it is.
what's the difference between this and a KKK rally?
Oh, there is no difference. They're the same people.
So the guy asked him, what's the difference in your mind? What's the difference between what's going on here and at a KKK rally? And the protester says, oh, in my mind, there is no difference.
The protesters made it very clear how they feel. We're about to head over to the conference center and talk to the man who's leading all of
This gentleman right here, this is Mr. Jared Taylor. This is the founder of the conference.
this. Mr. Taylor, hi, Phil Williams. At the main entrance, we were allowed inside.
This is very important. Sure, absolutely very important. These people can do your job. Sure, absolutely. If your girlfriend's a jet I mean, that's the kind of society we live in.
Under the condition that
So the founder of the conference asked them when they come in to please not record anyone or take pictures of anyone, because at this conference, these gentlemen, they want their identities to be held in secrecy. So he's saying that, hey, these men can lose their jobs, their girlfriends can guilt them, some of them could be left. So please do not release the identities of any of these individuals here. And I mean, I don't know if that's not a red flag. That goes to show you, you know, if you're going somewhere where you could potentially lose your job, or you could lose a relationship or someone. Listen, that should already be a red flag there, but to each is its own. Like, you can go to these type of things if you want. You know, in America, you do have the freedom to do these type of things without getting into any type of legal trouble. But I would just say in your own personal life, if you're attending an event and that could be the potential outcome of the event you're attending, probably not in the right place.
we not take video of any of the participants' faces. How would you describe the people who are attending this conference?
These are smart, observant, thoughtful Americans who see that our country is going in the wrong direction and has been going in the wrong direction for decades.
And in your critics say you use...
So he feels like they're smart individuals who pay attention, and they notice that the country is going in the wrong direction and has been going in the wrong direction for a long time now.
You know, being smart, being intellectual as a cover for racism.
What is racism, for heaven's sake?
Do you not know what racism is?
Well, nobody can really define it in any sensible, consistent way.
Jerry
I thought it was hilarious that he said no one can really find it in any sensible, consistent way. I mean, you know, there is some truth to that. I really won't lie. To some people, racism has its own definition, right? I don't think we could say there's a blanketed definition, but we could probably say it would be something to the sort of one being treated particularly wrongfully based on physical attributes, right? We can say something like that. Like it might fall somewhere along the lines of that, you know, Mr. Taylor. But he says that he doesn't know what racism is because he doesn't know a definition for it.
Taylor heads American Renaissance, which includes a website that promotes articles like how thousands of black behaviors opened my eyes. And leaked emails show the website was one often privately promoted by Trump advisor Stephen Miller. What's the difference
So Stephen Miller is a Trump advisor.
between what's happening here and a KKK rally?
I've never been to a KKK rally.
Mouse products are 20.
So he says he's never been to a KKK rally. The news anchor asked him, what's the difference between what's going on here and what goes on at a KKK rally? Mr. Taylor responds, I've never been to a KK rally, so I don't know what's going on there.
Isn't the message the same, though?
I have no idea. I've never been.
He asks him, isn't the message the same, like at your conference versus a KKK rally? He says, I have no idea. I've never been to one.
But I am delighted to see groups and organizations cropping up.
But leaked video from the 2021 conference shows Taylor meeting with Thomas Rousseau, the head of the Patriot.
This gentleman right here is Thomas Rousseau. This is the guy who is the head of the Patriot Front.
Front. That's a khaki-loving extremist group known for plastering communities, including the Nashville area, with their white supremacist slogans. In fact, when we checked our video, that was Rousseau we had spotted on the bridge. Patriot.
See, they say there that was Rousseau that they spotted on the bridge. So Thomas Rousseau, as I said, the leader of Patriot Front, his group is really known for doing a lot of vandalizing, especially with the swastika. Sometimes they like plaster that all over like certain parts of where they live at, especially like places where there are maybe mosques at or where they know like a lot of Jewish people hang out. So definitely also a lot of anti-Semitism going on within his group. But yeah, this guy right here, this gentleman, this is Thomas Rousseau.
Front later posted a group photo of them at this year's conference.
They do their thing, I do mine.
How about the neo-Nazis?
I don't even know a neo-Nazi.
But among this year's speakers was Austrian Martin.
So the news anchor asked him, how about the neo-Nazis basically attending your conference? And Mr. Taylor says, I don't even know a neo-Nazi. However, this gentleman right here was one of the speakers at his conference this year, and he is actually a pretty known neo-Nazi.
Sellner, a neo-Nazi who plastered swastikas on a synagogue in 2006. And
Plastered swastikas on the synagogues in 2006.
Some 50 people were killed at mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019. Emails show Sellner had been in contact with the shooter.
So emails show after people had been killed at a mosque and swastikas had been painted on mosque, that this guy was actually in contact with the shooter of some of the individuals who were killed in one of the prior incidences.
He was never charged with any wrongdoing. Sellner was barred from entering the U.S. and had to appear at the conference by video.
So because that gentleman was the one who's the neo-Nazi, he was actually banned from the U.S. So even though he attended the American Renaissance Conference this year, he had to do it by video. He wasn't there in person.
You not consider yourself a racist?
No.
Like other people, I think.
I love it. Like he says, what is a racist? There's no definition for it. And then the gentleman asks him, do you not consider yourself a racist? And he goes, no. There's no definition for it, right? So obviously he's saying he doesn't know what it is, but he knows for sure that he's not one. But there's no definition for it.
The American Renaissance Conference, Taylor argues for a separation of the races, where whites don't have to be reminded of slavery, segregation, or the fact that racism still exists.
So whites don't have to be reminded of slavery, segregation, or the fact that racism still exists. I mean, don't you love this stuff? Like this stuff it's hilarious to me because they have no definition for this, but yet it's like we don't know a solid definition for racism, but we don't want to be reminded that it still exists. absolutely hilarious to me. But what this conference calls for is a separation of the races, right? And that's the reason why earlier in the video I said, hey, if this is the way the boys want to play, let them play with their friends, right? They don't seem to be promoting violence. If they are, then I'm sorry I missed it. And the next time if I cover this again or anything like it, I'll make sure that I'm on top of that. But from what I can see, and like I said, this conference isn't new. I've known about this conference too. This is just the first time I happen to be covering it because I saw something about it. But they don't seem to be promoting any type of violence, like hurting anyone. Yes, the gentleman who was a speaker, he was said to be associated with one of the shooters, but no one that actually goes to that conference or I believe is a part of that conference has physically harmed anyone or a particular group of people other than vandalizing some property. So if they're not calling for annihilating any certain types of groups of races and they're like, hey, we just prefer to be in the company of other white people, it's like, hey, you like it, I love it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not the only group of people that feel like that. There are actually other groups of races in America that would like to be in the company of their own race. Not saying that they don't appreciate or want any type of diversity or any type of melting pot environment, but I know groups of African American people that have said like, yeah, I'd rather hang out with other black people than hang out with white people. I've known Hispanic people that have said, yeah, I'd rather hang out with Hispanic people than any other type of group of people. So that really doesn't bother me. It's not offensive to me. If they're like, hey, we want to hang out in our white only park and we don't want any other type of race or any group of people in there, hey, bro, knock yourself out. You know what I'm saying? I won't go into your park. So I feel them, you know. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't offend me. I don't feel like a separation of races is a bad thing, meaning like this man should, I don't know, be arrested or not allowed to have his conference. He's not bothering anybody. He's just saying, hey, we want to hang out with each other. So it's like, all right, knock yourself out. Hang out by yourself.
If leftists were consistent, they would be perfectly happy to say, yes, you white people, you torment all of these non-whites. Of course, we do not. And
But
you should be...
White people torment everyone.
You need to gloss over the history.
No, I'm not denying the history at all. What have I glossed over? Of course, there's been slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, lynching. I'm not denying any of them. Don't put words in my mouth.
See, the news anchor's trying to ask him a question about something, and he's trying to explain something about his conference, and he's saying, hey, you're wanting to gloss over the history. And he's saying, I'm not glossing over the history. He names some things. He goes over slavery, lynching, Jim Crow. And he says, but don't put words in my mouth. So he gets extremely offended there because he's trying to push this narrative and help this guy understand, like, hey, I'm not saying a group of people have to go anywhere or I necessarily hate anybody. I'm just saying that I'd rather be in the company of people who look like me.
It's when I pressed Taylor on how he and others at the conference would separate the races. If you want that white-only land, why don't you go find somewhere else to live?
What do you mean find somewhere else?
Where do you want the people of color to go?
I don't want them to go anywhere.
He was short on specific.
So the news anchor asks him, like, if you want this pure state, you know, this white only, you know, utopia, why don't you go somewhere else? And he's like, where else would I go? And the news anchor asks him, well, where do you want the people of color to go? Which is hilarious to me because it's like, why do you have to ask him where does he want the people of color to go? Why didn't you ask him where do you want the Asians to go? Or where do you want the Hispanics to go? Like, why does it? But he asks him, where do you want the people of color to go? And Mr. Taylor answers, he says, I don't want them to go anywhere. So he's making it clear. He's saying, listen, I just want this purest state. I just want this white utopia. I'm not saying that anyone has to necessarily go anywhere, but this is something that I would prefer to create. And the people who attend my conference agree with me.
So it sounds like you were advocating for something that you had no idea how it would work.
Oh, I have a good idea how it would work.
You just told me.
Well, the practicalities of it. I think it's entirely possible that an American state might secede. There is a considerable secessionist movement all around the country today.
So
It's
you are in
entirely
favor of
possible.
secession?
I
Breaking up the
believe,
United
I
States.
believe,
He says there's a huge secessionist movement going around the state now, so he believes that a white state can secede like that. Something like that can pop up to where there can be this white only utopia that essentially it's something that they are dreaming of. And that's no play on words. And one of their conferences, a gentleman who was making a speech was saying that he, if you wish for it, it could happen. And he kind of did a play on words with MLK saying, in other words, I have a dream. So they have a dream of having this white only utopia at some point, which again, I don't really care, just kind of giving you guys context.
I'm a believer in separation.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So he says it right there. He says, Mr. Taylor says, I'm a believer in separation. He's not promoting any type of violence. He says it in lots of other interviews that I've watched. He's like, I don't really know what stirs people up about it. We just want to come in here and have a conversation. You guys drop down in the comments what you think about this. I think the primary reason why I'm not offended by this is because I grew up in a family that was like this. So I wouldn't say my family presently today is like this, because a lot of us who were babies are not born are now adults or becoming adults. But a lot of what we would call the older heads in our family, the OGs, right? Grandma, grandpa, great-great-great-grandmother, and those guys. Yeah, very much the type of family that would, say little things like, hey, don't bring no white girl home. You know what I mean? Like, don't bring no white guy home. And it's like, as we would get older, we would make a joke about it, like, can they just not be white? Can it not be like a Russian person or an Asian person? Because we would think it was interesting that they would be very particular about not bringing this certain type of person home. So from an older generation standpoint, I could see that mindset still being there. I remember watching one of his interviews before, and he was talking to a younger white gentleman who was just so infatuated with him. You could tell that the guy really looked up to him. And he said, the things that you taught me, I'm going to make sure that I pass that information down to my son. So that's really the only way that I see this thing playing out, and it's constantly going. It's not a very huge conference. It's not like there's hundreds of thousands of people there, but people do go. It has grown over the years, and it's really something that seems to be passed down word of mouth with the way that this conference works. A lot of those protesters also, I want to point out, are very young protesters. You do see some older people from older generations there, but you definitely see Gen Z there, and probably a few millennials. And I think that's because, in the younger generation, it's just they're not going for that stuff. In the younger generation, that doesn't seem to be on the forefront of their minds. I know as a millennial personally, even though I grew up in a family like that, and that was like my family's quote unquote system, I bucked against it extremely. I thought it was the stupidest thing. But again, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, their own desires, right? This is part of what it means to be an American. If you're a Christian, you go by a different set of rules. But in America, he can feel like this. He can want this. He can strive for this. And he's not necessarily breaking a law. They're not talking about hurting anybody. And like I said, hey, if the boys want to play with just their types of boys, then let them play. They're not hurting anybody. And I can understand it. He's like, I don't know why we rile people up. Why do we get riled up about it? If they want to be by themselves, then they could be by themselves. I particularly like to be around a mixture of people. That can come from my background of being in the Marine Corps. When a person in the military fights for their country, I did not fight for only the African American people in America. I didn't fight for just one group of anybody in America. I fought for the country. So at the end of the day, we end up fighting for groups of people that we might not even wholeheartedly agree with, right? But we end up fighting for the entire country. So I prefer to be around a mixed group of people. That's how you get really great food. That's how you learn how to cook better. That's how you learn new seasonings. No offense to my white friends, but they usually like to be around more ethnic people, houses when it comes to eating foods. So, you know, if they want to only be around their friends and only eat their type of food, I'm like, hey, you guys might get a little bit bored, but more power to you, not hating on you for that. So you guys drop down in the comments, what do you think about this? What do you think about this striving for this one race utopia? It doesn't have to be just a white thing. You could be black. How would you feel about just a place where there were only black people? How would you feel about a place where there were only Mexican people, or there were only Greek people, or there were only you know, different types of maybe Hispanic people, Colombian people, or people from only Argentina? Like, how would you feel? Would that be something that you think you would be okay with? Or do you feel like you would be like just extremely bored, or you would lose your mind? Like, drop it down in the comments and let me know. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out on the corner with me. Take care of yourselves, guys. Love yourselves, love one another, treat each other well, and be peaceful. Peace.